An update now on a plan to move a mail processing center out of Nevada to California. Washoe County is now filing a lawsuit against the Postal Service to stop the move. The Washoe County District Attorney's Office has filed the lawsuit against the United States Postal Service on behalf of the county. Their suit seeks to stop the Postal Service from implementing its plan to move the processing operations from Reno to Sacramento as part of a strategy to consolidate their processing network. The DA says federal law requires USPS to first go through the Postal Regulatory Commission before implementing changes that affect service on a substantial nationwide basis. Their suit alleges that the USPS did not do this.
And meanwhile, Democratic Senator Jacky Rosen and Republican Governor Joe Lombardo are also uniting in opposition to this move. Rosen and the governor are calling that plan from the Postmaster General, quote, misguided. They are most concerned about how the weather could affect mail getting over the Donner Pass in northern Nevada, and they claim that the Postmaster General has remained silent despite several attempts to share ideas about what is best for the people of northern Nevada.
Arrogance and refusing to communicate for the people and the constituents and the representatives of the state of Nevada.
The mail processing center is set to be relocated to Sacramento in January of 2025 as part of a USPS consolidation plan.